Because I can't stop talking about the Mother series, I recently completed a fan game called Mother Cognitive Dissonance Between Two Times. This game was made by Mother fans calling themselves Giant Space Pickle, led by Otherhand. There's not a whole lot of videos about cognitive dissonance out there, so I decided to make an in-depth review. Spoilers for Mother and Earthbound as well as this game are present in this review. I encourage you to play these games before watching, especially if you're a Mother fan. Because this game ties into the originals, I'm going to compare them. Giant Space Pickle created their own engine to run the game. For the most part, it's pretty good. Version 2.0 was released this year with updated graphics and missions. This was the version I played. The updated graphics really add to the game. It looks like something between the NES and Super Nintendo. The graphics are similar to the first game, but animation is a step up. In fact, the animation is probably a tiny step up from Earthbound. The story chronicles Geeg's descent into madness. Geeg was the final boss in Mother. He was also the final boss in Earthbound, but his appearance was different and his name was changed to Gygus. Fans have always wondered how Geeg became Gygus. For fun, the people that made this game focused on that in the story. It takes place between the first two games in 1980X. In other words, sometime in the 80s. The title, Mother Cognitive Dissonance Between Two Times, reflects the theme of madness. It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. For those of you wondering, cognitive dissonance is a noun defined as the state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially relating to behavioral decisions and attitude changes. The playable characters in this game are aliens, and the story takes place in outer space. If I could make a suggestion, Spacebound would have been the perfect title for this game. According to Did You Know Gaming, Spacebound was a trademark that was filed by Nintendo, as well as the trademark Earthbound, when they were translating the first game for North America. It's assumed that they didn't go with the title Spacebound because the game didn't feature space exploration, which cognitive dissonance does. Just a thought. Anyway, the main character is a mook named Alanavar, and it's up to him and a Mr. Saturn, a Starman, and a bug piloting a UFO to find the Apple of Enlightenment. The Apple of Enlightenment is an item talked about in Earthbound but never seen, and it's only referenced at the end of the game. The game does its best to fill in the blanks between the first two games and does a pretty decent job. It doesn't solely rely on nostalgia. It uses those games more as inspiration, and the result is a professional-looking and fun RPG. Throughout the game, you'll see references to the first two games as well as Mother 3. You can tell that this game was a labor of love. I'm not going to talk about the entire story, though I will say that it is definitely worthy of being called a Mother game. It has a sense of humor and is overall a good experience. Let's talk mechanics. In the original trilogy, you had 8-directional movement. This meant that you could walk diagonal. The towns and levels were designed around this novel idea. There were diagonal paths that you could take. In Cognitive Dissonance, you only have 4-directional movement. This isn't a bad thing, and it doesn't break the game, but most of the levels are still designed with 8-directional movement. The levels do not reflect the 4-directional movement, and so at times it is awkward to go down a diagonal path. Instead of just walking diagonal, you have to press down, then left, then down again, until you reach the end of the path. I'm aware that this is nitpicky, but it is annoying at times. It made me realize how much 8-directional movement would help the game, and how it added to the aesthetic flair of the original games. Think about it. With 8-directional movement, the designers of the original games could make the towns a little more interesting. Houses are drawn to look 3-dimensional, and so the maps of those games didn't look plain or boring. Interesting still is that other popular RPGs at the time of the original trilogy didn't use 8-directional movement. Final Fantasy on the Famicom did not, but the first Mother game, also on the Famicom, did. Just check out a side-by-side comparison of their maps. On the left is a Final Fantasy map. On the right is a map for Mother. Notice how the Mother map has the houses facing a diagonal direction, as if the game didn't stand out enough. Just think of playing the game for the first time back then. You're used to maps like the Final Fantasy one. Now all of a sudden, you're playing a game from a different perspective, and since you can move diagonal, it makes exploration of the area easier. Let's jump forward a generation. On the left is a map from Final Fantasy VI on the Super Nintendo. On the right is a map from Earthbound, or Mother 2, also on the Super Nintendo. The same principle applies here. One little tweak in a game, such as 8-directional movement, can change a designer's vision for a game. Without 8-directional movement, diagonal maps would be an awkward chore to explore. I'm not sure, but could it be that the first Mother game was the first RPG to use 8-directional movement? If so, it was a good call and it made the game that much more interesting. The designer of Cognitive Dissonance has stated that he had plans to have 8-directional movement as well as a dash ability, but couldn't due to the limitations of the engine. The battle system for this game is surprisingly different than the original games. In the originals, during combat you would take turns. Your turn, then the enemy's turn, your turn, and so on. Cognitive Dissonance is an active battle system. This means that even though it is your turn, the enemy can still attack you. After you choose an attack, you have to wait for your wait bar to fill up before you can attack again. This is the most frustrating part of the game. I'm not sure why they went with this battle system because the original system worked fine. Sometimes while waiting for the bar to fill up, the enemy waits as well. So there is a period of 5 to 10 seconds where no one is doing anything. On top of that, the enemy does attack you while the bar is filling up. The bar stops completely until the attack is over. This becomes even more frustrating when you're fighting multiple enemies. Also, some enemies can stun you and you become numb for a few turns. The bar stops during these these few terms while you're helpless. As if this wasn't enough, if it is your turn and you're thinking about what to do next, and an enemy attacks you, you can't explore the attack menu. You can't, say, select the goods menu and see what items you have real quick before they are attacking. Instead, control is wrestled away from you until the attacks are finished. Throughout the game, the difficulty curve steadily increases. Enemies have more health and are stronger towards the end of the game. Although the battle system is extremely frustrating for me, it doesn't break the game. To the designer's credit, the leader did say that the battle system was something he wished he had more time to work on. Taking everything into consideration, the game still did what it was set out to do, be a fun, charming, and motherish experience for Mother fans. With all the limitations, the team did a great job with what they had. The soundtrack is as entertaining and catchy as the original games. Some of the songs are fan-made versions that came from the official trilogy. Other songs were made specifically for this game. As popular as this game is with Mother fans, there's not a whole lot of playthroughs or walkthroughs online. I found one playthrough on YouTube, but no walkthroughs. When playing this game, you're on your own. This is reminiscent of the early gaming era. Back then, there were no walkthroughs that you could bring up for free at any time online. You just had to figure it out, or buy a walkthrough if one was even made for the game you're playing. Version 2.0 of Cognitive Dissonance has so many side objectives. Some are cryptic, and I don't even think anyone has figured some of them out yet. You can try to find some info online, but you have to read through pages and pages on the Cognitive Dissonance forum. This gives the game an even more old school feel. It's challenging and worth playing, not to mention free. I'll link to it in the description. Thanks for watching.